Welcome to Empower Humans.
Welcome again to the Empower Humans podcast. This is episode 90, day 19 of our continuing coronavirus coverage and commentary, but huge show today. 2 years that we've had this podcast go. I can't believe it. 2 years have flown by. Also, we have the incredible Laura Gassner Otting back for a second time. We did an interview with her a little while back, about a year ago, when we were about 1 year into the podcast. And I want to remind you, as always, up front, we'll get into all this stuff and then get into the interview. You are absolutely priceless. You're never alone. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Don't let anything convince you otherwise, especially this time. If you lost a job, if you're dealing with all kinds of hardships or just frustration and kind of the unknown and a little bit of fear or a lot of fear or whatever the case might be, you are absolutely priceless. And especially right now, you are absolutely not alone. So keep all that in mind. You know, as I think about 2 years having this podcast, I was scared. And one day I sat down, I actually did a couple interviews, probably spaced out about a couple months apart. And finally, I sat down to do a couple, things on my own as well, which ended up becoming episode 1 and so on, and 1 and 2. And then we had an interview after that. And you can go back to the beginning and kind of see where we started. And but I just had to sit down one day and press record and, of course, start talking and make some calls and send some emails and set up some interviews. And since then, we've interviewed incredible people like Laura Gassner Otting, famous musicians, filmmakers, authors. We've interviewed the author of Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus with his co-author of a new book called The Boy Crisis. All kinds of things, from bullying to music to motivation and leadership and coaching and training and all kinds of things we've covered in this podcast and just general success principles. I believe and I hope that we've brought you value. I'm not going to make this so self-serving. I'm going to leave it at that. But again, happy birthday to the podcast. Go eat some cake for me today, for the podcast and for you, for all of us. Let's celebrate that. I want to talk about just touch on some details with this coronavirus as it continues to develop and the situation there. Let's start by talking about the numbers real quick. 1,343,557 confirmed cases, 74,626 deaths. Wow. And of that, over 278,000 have recovered. We talk about Italy, 132,000 confirmed cases, 16,000 deaths, which is well over 10 to 12% of the folks there have died, have passed away with this virus, and a lot of open cases still. Spain, same situation, 136,675 cases, 13,341 deaths, which is over 10%. Now in the U.S., 364,885 cases, and well over 10,000. We've actually now approached almost 12,000 deaths. So we're at a time where, again, we touched on this the other day, people are saying this is going to be our Pearl Harbor, our 9/11 moment as it concerns this particular challenge. And I believe we're going to come together just like we did in those times. I love, even though these are difficult times, I love seeing what humanity is capable of. In fact, I want to touch on something here that I saw the other day from our friend Katie Couric on Instagram. She shared a video, and you don't even need to see the video. You can go to her Instagram page. It's last week. It's about 9-10 posts down as of this recording. But she's showing fire department folks, firefighters essentially, coming outside a hospital and cheering. So I want you to listen to that for a second, and we'll just play about 5 seconds of it because it might be a little overwhelming audibly, but here it is. Okay, it's a little bit longer than that. There's some visual of a bunch of fire trucks lined up. They were outside of New York University Langone Medical Center. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. They blared their sirens. They had a standing ovation in gratitude for these medical professionals working and helping in essentially the epicenter, in the United States at least, of this coronavirus pandemic. And I couldn't agree with them more. I wish I could be there to stand with them, to support and extend love to these medical professionals. If you're one of those people, or share this podcast with those people, because we're so grateful for everything that they're doing. Sacrifices galore. Some people, I've heard of people sleeping in their garage to stay away from their family to be able to serve and help these communities out there. So go watch that video. Also, like I said, on Katie Couric's Instagram page. I want to touch on another thing that I saw. Now, this is based on some material. We're hearing about this hydroxychloroquine, I believe it's called. And I'm going to read you a little something here real quick. There's a Los Angeles doctor, Dr. Anthony Cardillo, an ER specialist, I'm reading here, and CEO of Mend Urgent Care, has been prescribing the combination of drugs to patients experiencing severe symptoms of the disease. This is hydroxychloroquine and zinc after contracting the novel coronavirus. Every patient I've prescribed it to, this is a quote, has been very, very ill, and within 8 to 12 hours, they were basically symptom-free, Cardillo said in an interview Sunday with the KABC TV. So clinically, I'm seeing a resolution. He added that combining the drug with zinc has been the key to the success. The hydroxychloroquine, he said, opens the zinc channel, allowing the zinc to enter the cell, which then blocks the replication of cellular machinery. Cardillo was careful to note that the drug should only be prescribed for patients who are extremely sick and in urgent need, so as to not blow through the limited supply of the drug, which is used to treat other illnesses as well. So food for thought there. Do some research. I just want to throw that out there. I'm trying to throw out pieces of value for each and every one of us as we get through this. We will get through this. I'm seeing glimmers of light as I look at the news and do my own research and watch these numbers and these curves hopefully flatten. There are folks who aren't really abiding by some of the measures with social distancing and stuff, but I think by and large, for the most part, most people are, including our friend Laura Gassner Otting. Nice transition there, right? She came to us via Zoom from her home, actually in Boston, and I'm here in Las Vegas. Beautiful. We can do these things these days, communicate all over the world. I want to point out too, I'm still working on my audio with Zoom, so my audio was a little bit off, but thankfully she did most of the talking for a whole bunch of reasons, thankfully, because she's she's a lot more articulate and smart than me. And I'm also part of a beta group, and we're almost done. We're going to get to the interview in about 20 seconds. She has a course, a Limitless course based on her book, which is called Limitless, How to Ignore Everybody, Carve Your Own Path, and Live Your Best Life. So watch for that course. We're going to talk a little bit about all that and all the things related to the coronavirus and some of the principles in the course and stuff as well, consonants and all these things. So look for that. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, she's going to explain all of it. So here we go with our interview with Laura Gassner Otting, and happy birthday to the podcast, and keep staying strong and positive, everybody. Oh, by the way, our challenge is study, make great moments, and let's keep doing this podcast together. Here we go. Welcome, everybody. We got LGO in the house. Well, not in the house. We're on the screen here today. But in her house and me in my house across the country. It's beautiful. We can do these things these days. How you doing, Laura?
I'm doing as well as can be expected. Everybody's healthy. Everybody's happy. We are taking it day by day. Yeah.
And for those who don't know, LGO, everyone should know by now, Laura Gassner Otting. But it's somewhat long name, and LGO is just a nice, it's like Madonna or something. But you're far above that realm. Now, you're from the East Coast originally, or where are you from originally?
Yeah, I grew up in Miami, Florida. So I live in Boston now, but I spent my formative years, I was born in New York, but my formative years in Miami. So I'm an East Coast kind of girl.
Okay, cool. And you put out this book.
California, though.
Yeah, me too. I lived there for a little while. I'm in Vegas now, but I do love the West Coast. I haven't spent as much time in the East. My whole life's pretty much been in the West. So, but I've been back. I haven't been to Boston. How are things in Boston these days with everything going on?
Well, so we are about a week ahead of other parts of the country. So I think the coronavirus hit pretty hard in California, and we were a few days behind California. We're not quite where New York City is, because obviously we don't have it's quite close quarters, but I think it's sort of hitting the coast, and then it's kind of working its way in, sort of big cities hitting first. So I'm on a text chain with my mother in Florida, my sister in Texas, and my cousin who lives in Georgia. And just based on that very, very small sample set, I can say that we're about a week ahead of where they are, because the things that I'm telling them, go out and make sure you do this, they're like, oh, I should have got out and done that a week ago. Yeah, so you're a little bit ahead of the curve, but you've got communication at different little strategic points in the country to see what's going on too. Yeah. Any tidbits from any of these other places as well, places like Texas and down south and stuff, or are you getting any insights from these people about what's going on? Because it's different places. Yeah, they're in different places, and I also think that the political sensibilities in those places are different also. So, my sister in Texas tells me that her friends are making sure that they've got guns and ammo in case people raid their houses. And, my mom who lives in Florida is talking about all the young people that are still going to the beaches. And of course she's older and lives she's not, she's in her 70s, so she's not like at the independent living facility age, but she's also not, got kids in the house. So, she's talking about all of her friends and their grandkids and who's visiting who and whether or not they could go on their cruise. And my cousin who's in Atlanta, who runs a manufacturing company, is of course apoplectic about supply chain and whether or not the business is going to still survive after this is all over. So they're all in very different places based on what they're thinking and also what their neighbors are thinking.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That's funny what you say about Texas. I grew up next to Texas in New Mexico, so little Albuquerque. Well, comparatively, it's a big city, but not really. But we know the Texas mentality a little bit. So with everything going on in your world, how are you guys handling this, I guess, quarantine, social distancing? Like, do you go out at all? Some people still are going out. Some people aren't. You're not as strict, I guess, as New York.
Yeah, so we don't have like a shelter in place in your homes, but all schools and non-essential businesses are all closed until May 4th here as of yesterday from the governor. It's kind of like a fellow friend in the speaking industry was describing it as it's like when you're waiting for your delayed flight and every hour they're like, it's going to be another hour. And then you wait 45 minutes. They're like, and sorry, folks, we need to do another thing and it's going to be another hour. And I just feel like we're sort of, it was April, now it's May, maybe it'll be June. And then I just saw that in Canada, Justin Trudeau said that they are looking to like at least, through, June or July that they're going to be doing social distancing. I have not been going out that much. We moved from weekly grocery shopping to getting Instacart delivered for like 2 weeks of groceries. So our entire porch was covered in groceries. We learned that you can freeze milk, which is good because I have teenage boys in the house. So, teenage boys are very unhappy when they can't have cereal and milk. You can take anything else away from them, but cereal and milk, do not take that away from your teenage boys or you will have a mutiny on your hands. And I still have been going outside to exercise. So, I can run by myself. I don't live that far from the Harvard Stadium. So you could go to the stadium and be a section away from somebody else. So I feel like it's possible. I don't know if it's probable, but it's not outside of the realm of possibility that we might have some of the same restrictions that you see in places like Europe, where it's like you can only go outside your home for an hour a day and you can only go to a certain place and you can only be in your yard or things like that. And I feel like until we get to that point, I'm not going near other human beings, but I also want to make sure that on any day where it's not pouring rain, I go outside. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. And I got boys too, but they're not teenage. They're 8 and 10 at the moment, but they still eat their cereal. But we don't see. I'm in Las Vegas, and the interesting thing in Vegas, everyone knows the Las Vegas Strip and everything. But it's all. I was down there a couple times for various reasons.
Crazy what that must look like right now.
Well, there's still cars up and down because the streets aren't closed, but yeah, all the hotels, they've got police barricades at like the entrances. You can't go in the garages, and the mall down there by the Wynn and other stuff. It's all gone. I know lots of people lost jobs. I mean, tens of thousands of people just in Vegas, but millions and millions across the country.
Well, and Vegas is interesting because, Vegas is not just hit by tourism, but it's also hit by, and it's hit by the economy. So if people don't have extra money, they're not going to go, they're not going to gamble. But it's also, my industry, the events industry, as a professional speaker and as an author, I'm in Vegas multiple times a year speaking, and the midweek business for them, all of these events, it's not just when will we be able to travel again, when we'll be able to get together in groups of more than 10 people again, but what about the insurance business, and when will the insurance companies want to underwrite these large conferences? So it's one thing if you have a corporate conference where it's all in-house people that are all in your building and you're bringing in a speaker to talk to them. But what about these associations? I think there's plenty of associations that are going to go under because their big annual events every year are their major source of income. So if they can't bring people together because people don't want to travel, or because there's government restrictions, or because they can't get the insurance to underwrite the event if in case they get sued because somebody doesn't wash their hands once and suddenly you have a breakout among 1,000 people. So, I think it's going to be years before we see anything even approaching normal, especially in places like Vegas.
Yeah, I hope it's not that way because I see a lot of people already suffering and
I think the sound just went out.
Come up with an opportunity. Here's an opportunity. And we're losing your connection a little
Nope,
bit.
I got you back again.
There you go. Okay. It is what it is. Here we are. Thankfully, we all still have internet, more or less, at least today, because we can do things like this and Netflix and so on. But what do you think is going to come of all this? Because I watch people stepping up. I watch these cruise lines who've suffered greatly stepping up, saying, look, we've got cruise ships we can bring into port and use as hospitals of sorts. And the interesting thing, this indivisible one nation kind of thing, because I don't want to be too long-winded. I have a great aunt who built airplanes during World War II. She just turned 100, and she built airplanes for 70 years into her 90s. She was on Ellen and stuff, and I've talked about her a couple times.
She's Rosie the Riveter.
Yeah, Rosie the Riveter, exactly. And she's, but she talks about how people came together, and this isn't the same kind of war. It's a different kind of scenario, but I hope it's the same mentality. America's been through a lot. So having said all of that, what do you think is going to come of all this, especially in America, but globally, if you have any ideas, and if not, that's okay.
I don't want to get political because I know that this isn't a political kind of show. So I won't, but I will say that I think that in times of great challenge, we learn who we really are. So I don't think, my friend Jackie Summers likes to say that challenge doesn't change us, it reveals us. And I think that this is a moment where this crisis is revealing who we are. It's revealing our character. It's revealing who we are in our finest hour. And I think there are going to be people who rise up to this challenge in a way that we are proud of. I like to think, and again, you mentioned that I go live to, my tribe every day at 10 a.m. Eastern. And today, I as you know, I was just talking about when we look back on this 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 60 years from now, are we going to say, I was proud of who I was at the time, right? I was proud of who I was then. I was proud of the things that I did and the people that I care for and how I showed up in the world for the people I love and the causes that I hold dear. And what do I think is going to happen from this is that I think a lot of us are going to realize what it is we actually care about, right? We are being forced to come to grips with what do we care about and what do we not care about? Are we struggling to keep our families alive and keep food on the table and keep toilet paper in our bathrooms by working a job that we hate? Or are we actually, trying to do the job that we love, and in the meantime, also making sure there's food on the plate and toilet paper? So if we're being called to spend the majority of our waking hours doing a thing, doing a job, why are we doing it? And after the end of this, I don't think we're going to come out the other side and return to normal. I think we're going to come out the other side and there's going to be a new normal. And I think that new normal is whatever we make it out to be. Like, it's our choice. Like, it's in our hands. We get to decide what we want our life to look like on the other side of this. And yeah, there's economics of reality, and we all have to make ends meet, but we do have choices within that about how we do it. And I think there are going to be a lot of struggles and a lot of hard times between now and then when we have to figure out how we make those transitions, maybe 3 years from now, maybe 5 years from now, maybe 10 years from now. But it is in this time that we have an opportunity to plant some of the seeds of what we want to grow. And so I think, there's that old, very trite expression that, like, whatever you don't change, you accept. And I think this is our opportunity to decide what it is that we want to accept and what it is that we want to change when we get to the other side of this.
Yeah. And interesting. And, I like in your course and a lot of your work, you talk about this question of, do you have a full life or a full scorecard? How do you think that plays into all this, or any time in life where there's challenges? Do you have a full life or a full scorecard?
Yeah. So, to give a little background to your listeners, the book that I wrote is called Limitless: How to Ignore Everybody, Carve Your Own Path, and Live Your Best Life. And it starts with the subtitle, How to Ignore Everybody, right? That's a very important part of the carving your own path and living your best life piece of it. And when I talk about it from stage, I ask people to think about who gave them their definition of success, right? Like, who was the person who said, you should go be an accountant, you should be a lawyer, you should be a teacher, you should, be a stay-at-home parent, like, you need to live in this house and drive that car and send your kids to, this preschool program. Everybody has somebody, at least one, if not a handful of people, who throughout their lives dropped these definitions of what success should look like into their world, whether it was intentional or unintentional. My fourth grade teacher told me I should be a lawyer because I was argumentative. Of course, I told her she was wrong because I was argumentative. But then I proceeded to create a path that got me to law school, where I looked around the very first day and I was like, I don't belong here. This isn't where I want to be. I don't want to be a lawyer. But I had in my mind the definition of success as, you should be a lawyer. I plucked it out of thin air and I placed it at the top of my scorecard as if that was the thing that defined what success meant. And so each one of us are busy building these lives. And then we look around one day and we're like, well, if I've gotten all the things checked off the scorecard, why am I not happy? Why do I still feel like something's missing? And what I say is, it's because you're so busy building this full scorecard that you didn't stop long enough to say, is that the scorecard for me? Or is that the scorecard for my fourth grade teacher or my parent or my boss or whoever? And, I think this moment in time, this forced pause, is an opportunity to actually say, well, what is my definition of success, right? Like, if doing all these things and building this full scorecard isn't making me happy, then what is the full life that I want to build, which will?
Great. I bet your fourth grade teacher might be a little shocked and surprised at the influence she had in your early years. It's interesting how those things come about. Kids, it's very easy to plant a seed of some sort in a child's mind. And here your fourth grade, or parents, or what, because it happens with everybody in some capacity. You need to do this, you need to do that. Is there something people can do from a young age? Like I said, I've got 8 and 10-year-old boys. What should I be saying to them now to say, let's ignore everybody, because you don't want them to ignore their parents, because I want to tell them to look both ways when they cross the street and all that kind of stuff. But is there something we could do with kids? A lot of people have their kids at home right now. What can we do to teach our kids right now to do a lot of your principles from a childhood standpoint?
Yeah. So, it's funny. I've been actually doing a lot of talking and a lot of writing these weeks since we've been home about how I've been parenting. And I got asked by somebody to write them up more formally. And I was like, I'm not a parenting expert by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just making it up as I go along. So all caveats here, this is not professional advice. I know what works in my house with my children. But here's what I have found. I don't like being lectured to at all, right? Do you like being lectured to?
No,
Nobody likes it. Nobody likes to hear, you need to do this, you must do this, you have to do that. What they really want, what I like and what you like and what lots of people like, I'm guessing, is people asking you how you want to be part of upholding the community in which you find yourself. So rather than telling my children they have to take out the trash every Monday, I just have a Post-it note. I have a whole pile of Post-it notes on my freezer that are like, these are the daily tasks, right? Like walk the dog. There's 2 of those because she has to get walked twice. Wipe down all the surfaces with a Clorox bleach, wash your hands and empty the dishwasher. There's like things like that have to happen every day. Then there's a different color for Mondays, a different color for Tuesdays, different color for Wednesdays on through the week. And then there's a different color for long range projects like, clean out the closet or straighten up the playroom or, get rid of the old toys you don't play with anymore, things like that. And the very first day that we were locked inside, I walked around the house like, have you walked the dog yet? Did you take out the trash yet? And I was basically nagging everybody. And I felt like I had self-imposed this stress upon myself because I had self-imposed a role of being prison warden and, cruise director and, circus trainer. And I felt like I had to do everything. And what I decided was, you know what? I don't need to do that. I'm just going to put a pile of Post-its on the freezer of the things that have to happen every day, the things that have to happen each day, and I don't care who does them. I'll do some of them, they'll do some of them, and at the end of the day, the only expectation is you do something to uphold this family. You do something to uphold this community under our roof. And by the end of every day at dinner, we go, okay, great, everything's done. What didn't get done? How do we know? How are we going to do better tomorrow? And I ask them 4 simple questions. What did you do today for your mind? What did you do today for your body? What did you do today for your soul? And what did you do today for your family? And sometimes it may be, for my mind, I read a book. For my body, I exercised. Or they might say, I rested and I didn't do anything. I slept late. For my soul, I played Xbox with my friends. For my family, I did the dog walking and the dishwasher emptying. But it allowed everybody to have a role in our family where they could live into being their own kind of leader, and they could live into being an upholder of this community broadly. So rather than lecture them about how they had to be right now, because I don't even know how I'm supposed to be right now. Like, this is all brand new. We're all figuring out. There is no user's manual for how to manage your, crumbling work and your stressful relationships and technology that's failing in the middle of a crisis. I certainly not a parent in the middle of it. But so if I don't know what I'm doing, they don't know what they're doing, I'm just going to put up what everybody needs to be doing. And then people can live into that in whatever way they feel like doing in that day, with the expectation that they just have to do something.
Yeah.
So that's how I'm parenting right now.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like that you're finding a sense of balance with these 4 questions. And I like the little lawyer-like disclaimer you had at the beginning that you're not an expert. So that helps too. So when it comes to these areas that we're doing, you talk about the body and the soul and the family and your mind, as I recall. Not in that order. But what is it? Because you use this word a lot, consonants. And I haven't heard, because a lot of times people who are in this space kind of regurgitate a lot of the same stuff that's been around. I haven't heard the word consonants from anyone but you, and that's not to say I'm some expert either. But tell us about consonants, because to me, it comes from a flow of poetry and maybe even music and things. But in context of what you teach.
Yeah, so your sound went out just at the very end there, so I'm hoping I didn't just talk over you. So consonants. Consonants is it's the opposite of dissonance. Like, we all know dissonance, right? When things are noisy and they're fighting against each other and it's like organ rejection. But consonance it's alignment, it's flow. It's when the very best of what you do is being called upon to solve a problem that you care about. And you're being rewarded for solving that problem in some way that is emotionally or financially meaningful to you, right? That's when you feel like you could walk through walls, you could jump over buildings, you could fly. Like, it's this weightless feeling of this frictionless feeling of belonging, of momentum. And we've all had those moments in our life where we felt like we were in consonance, whether we were on stage giving a huge speech, or we were nailing a presentation and winning the deal, or we were wooing the girl or the guy, or maybe it was a quiet moment with a loved one, or helping a colleague through a difficult, intractable problem. We've all had those moments where we've been like, yeah, I was awesome. I was awesome in that moment, right? I was like empowered, and I was capable, and I crushed it. And they're like these little glimpses, these little glimmers of brilliance that we have. And what I write about in Limitless is I try to help build out a framework for people of how to find those moments, and then how to build more of them into our lives, because that's where we find our success actually equals happiness. That's when we really have that joy and that spark and that momentum. So, I spent 20 years interviewing thousands of leaders when I did executive search. And what I realized was that the people who had built the full scorecards and had success on paper didn't feel successful in real life. But the people who had consonants, where what they did matched who they were, those are the ones who were they were in such alignment and such flow that they were even more successful at the work that they decided they wanted to do.
Very good points. Thank you for sharing that. I think about it as a flow. I think of Tony Robbins uses a term called a beautiful state, which is, I think, very general, but it's also something of a mindset, of a flow that is probably in line with what you're talking about. I like to use the word alignment. My listeners will probably get worn out because I refer to that. Someone taught me a long time ago that the word joy in other languages, I think including Hebrew, refers to an alignment. And so it also refers to a return to something. And is there a way that we return to consonance, so to speak? Because I think it's a natural state that we're supposed to be in. We're the ones who get out of alignment, out of tune. Is there a recipe to get to that state that you're describing?
Yeah, so in my book, I talk about it having 4 key elements. And they all start with C. There's calling, connection, contribution, and control. And each one of us is going to want and need different amounts of calling, connection, contribution, and control at different moments in our lives. So what you need and what I need will be very different. What will put us in consonance will be very different. But the person you are today versus the person you were 10 years ago versus the person you are 10 years from now will also need a very different rubric of consonance. So the four elements I'll go through really quickly are calling. Calling is this gravitational force. It's like the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning. It is a business you want to build, a bottom line that you want to grow, a leader who inspires you, a cause you want to serve. If you're an entrepreneur, it could be your own self, right? Your own business that you're creating. It could be a family that you want to nurture. Then there's connection. Connection really answers the question of, does your work matter? If you didn't show up in front of your Zoom conference call this morning, would anybody know? Would anybody care? Do you see a direct line between the work that you're doing and that calling that you want to serve? The third piece is contribution. If connection's all about the work, contribution's really about you. How does this work, this brand, this company, this family, this product, this leader allow you to have the kind of career trajectory you're looking for? How does it give you the lifestyle that you want to live? Does it allow you to manifest your values on a daily basis? And then the last piece is control. And control really answers the question of how much personal agency do you have to affect how much your work connects to that calling and how much it contributes to your life. And so each one of us at different ages and different life stages are going to need and want different pieces of this. And how we, to answer the question of whether or not we return to consonance, I think we don't return to consonance. I think consonance, our personal recipe for consonance continues to grow and evolve, and we don't return to where it was if we allow ourselves the grace to understand that, well, maybe at this point in my life, I want to make a lot of money and I want to be able to afford that second home. So I'm going to do work I don't care that much about necessarily. And it isn't that connected to my calling because I wanted to contribute to the vacation home. Or maybe you say, wow, what I really realized in this time of crisis is that I've been on the road way too much. And even though I feel like the work is directly related to, to the work I'm doing, what I really want is I want to actually have dinner with my family every night because that's been pretty nice. So my definition, my need, my recipe for consonance continues to evolve and change as I evolve and change. And so I don't know that we return to consonance so much as we let it evolve and we allow ourselves the grace to continue to discover and rediscover it.
Oh, that makes sense, because we are constantly, hopefully, growing people. And so some of the factors and details surrounding that will change as well. Is there, now you've got this course, and I've had the privilege of kind of going through some of the beta group of that course, and I've got to say it's excellent. Like, the material is first of all very well done, very like high production quality, but also and also the content is top notch. I mean, you just can't go, because it's one thing to have beautifully done video, but if it's all just garbage material, which yours isn't, and it's all video for the most part. There's also a workbook and there's some other great tools, and boy, I could just go on and on and on, but let's talk about these 4 C's a little bit more in depth. And right now, again, with everything going on, it's all in context of where we are as a world, as a society, with this virus and stuff going around. A lot of people are talking about, well, you're cooped up in your house. Why don't we be more creative? Why don't we develop that skill or that side hustle, or these various terms people use? How do we find our calling? Because when we say calling, it kind of implies that it's a specific thing, person by person. Do you have any keys for that?
Yeah, so I think everybody is going to have their own ideas about it. I think what's important is to think about, well, why do we get calling wrong? And I think we get calling wrong because we think that it has to be purpose, this like lofty purpose, this bigger goal that we have. It has to be like Mother Teresa feeding the lepers in India. And it doesn't have to be, right? Your purpose is only your purpose. And I think we give votes in our lives to people who shouldn't even have voices. And so when we do that, we get completely off track about what our calling should be. So what I ask people to do is to really spend some time figuring out what fuels you, right? Like, what really matters to you. And when you think about what really matters to you, it is everything from where do you spend your time when you could spend your time on anything? What do you actually do? Where do you actually, like, what kinds of books do you read? What sorts of hobbies do you have? What kinds of people do you interact with? And when you start to think about those things, it really shows you where you want to put your energy. So like the best way to figure out what you want to do is to figure out what you actually do. What causes you joy? What motivates you? Where do you feel most yourself? And in the course, I have people go through a number of exercises where they can actually think about this both in their work life and their personal life, whether it's, in their places of worship or their community organizations or the jobs that they have. And when they go through some of those exercises, it becomes very clear what actually fuels them and where they want to spend their time, whether it's because of the cause or the leader or the company, or the cause or whatever the case may be for them.
Okay, great points. Somebody said recently something along those lines too that resonated with me about people we look up to, and it seems like most of us have some people we look up to, but a lot of times that can be kind of a hint of things that are maybe developing in you that maybe could be talents. If I looked up to LGO, which I do, or Tony Robbins, or some hockey player, I grew up playing music. I played drums, so I looked up to a lot of drummers and stuff. I think we talked about that last time about how you had said, but I digress. The people that we look up to a lot of times give us a hint as to what our calling might be too. And so I think there's that. And interesting you say and I've heard you say this about giving votes to people who shouldn't have voices. You've got your kids up on the internet because everyone's at home, huh?
Yeah, I'm sorry, they're in school right now. So a really good exercise for people to go through, and I think if you started moving your way through the course, you'll see this is one of the ones in one of the early modules, is to think about community, education, faith, family, freedom, health, impact, justice, money, personal growth. Like, what are the areas that are most important to you? And then why? Why are those things important to you? What are the things that you do? Like, why is community important to you? Why is education important to you? Why is faith important to you? And how do you manifest the way that you show that importance on a daily basis? And I think that's both like the aspects of your life that where you're demonstrating that those are actually important aspects to you. But I think it also is, as you were saying, the people that you look up to. I talked this morning a lot about how I think that we all need to have 3 specific people in our inner circle, right? We need to have somebody who we can mentor, because I think that having somebody that we can teach something to helps people get over that imposter syndrome, that concern that we might not belong. And it really teaches you that you really do have something to give and something that's of value to other people. I think having somebody who is your peer, so you have somebody that sort of is on the same journey as you are, and they can, there's somebody that you can celebrate with, there's somebody that you can commiserate with, but they're also somebody who can just hold you accountable, right? You can hold each other accountable. And then I think somebody that you aspire to is also important. And when we think about our calling, looking for people who also share those same callings and seeing how they manifest them on a daily basis, I think really matters a lot, because we really are the combination of the people that we keep closest to us. That's a Jim Rohn quote, you're the average of people, the 5 closest people to you.
Yeah.
But I think there's a better one by John Wooden, the legendary basketball coach, who talks about how you will never outperform your inner circle. And so, I think thinking about the people who are in your inner circle and do they share the same kind of calling that you do will really help you understand whether or not that's truly your calling, or whether or not that's one of those just like look good goals. Like you put it on the wall and it looks really good for other people to see, but you don't want to tell everyone that your calling is just buying a Maserati and a beach house. You're going to tell them your calling is curing cancer. But what I'm here to say is if your calling is buying the Maserati and the beach house, then great. That's your calling. That's totally cool. And I'm not going to purpose shame anybody. But I think it's super important to be really honest with yourself about the calling, because I think everything else kind of goes from there.
Well, yeah. And if you talk about the Maserati and the beach house, we're talking also about all these C's kind of intertwining of calling, connection, contribution, control. So when you say contribution, I think that has to flow through that too. And if you're going to get the Maserati in the beach house, which is assuming you're not a trust fund baby of some sort, that there's going to be some sort of contribution of necessity as well. So now we talk about connection. To me, that's a very important word. I come from a really wacky family situation myself, and there's not a lot of connection there, unfortunately. I mean, there are on certain individual levels and relationships. And you talk about this inner circle too. A lot of people are cooped up with their inner circle, and hopefully it's a good inner circle. How do we best develop this connection part of the process in terms of, because there's various levels of that. You got family, you've got business, you've got, maybe if someone plays music like I did, you've got a band or something. I was always told by my drum teachers, play with musicians who are better than you so that you get better.
Yeah.
So talk to me about connection and all that. I don't mean to be long-winded. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think connection really is, does your work matter, right? Like all the people that you're spending time with and all the things that you're doing, are they actually getting you any closer to achieving that calling, to achieving the goals that you've set up for yourself? And I think we get super busy. I mean, I think right now, especially, I think what's happening is that people are like, hey, I need to pick your brain about something. And our response is, yeah, anytime, I'm free all day, right? Because like, we got nowhere to go. And what I was finding, so here in Boston, as I mentioned, we're about a week ahead of, a lot of other parts of the country. So this is now our third week in lockdown. So tomorrow will be 3 full weeks since my kids have been out of school. Like we are, it's,
yeah. Wow.
They say it's like 21 days to make a new habit. Like tomorrow is our habit. Like we are here. And what I found for the first week is that I was offering people anytime they wanted, like, are you free? I'm free. Let's talk anytime. And what I realized was there are people that I talk to who bring out the best in me. There are times of the day when I do my very best work. And if I don't get my workout in the morning, it just doesn't happen. Like I could put the yoga pants on and, the workout, the jog bra and all that stuff on, and I could have the best intention to work out. But if I don't do it in the morning, it doesn't happen. And so what I realized was that just like in my regular day, where I don't give away my precious, most creative time, I don't give away my precious, most creative time now. I was giving it away because I was like, oh, you want to talk? Sure, I'm free all day. Set up that call for 9 a.m. in the morning. But it turns out that 9 a.m. in the morning is the time after I've exercised, after I've showered, after I've had my tea, where I'm like, all the ideas flow out. And so I stopped giving that time away. And so, the way that I stay connected to the calling that I want, the way I stay connected to the work I really want to do, is I ask myself some very important questions about whether or not the ask I'm getting is just like somebody throwing spaghetti at the wall and I happen to be the wall and I catch some of it, or if it actually matters. Like, does this work actually matter to me? Does this interaction actually matter to me? Is the fight I'm having with my family actually important, right? Like, what is it that I want to be doing? What kind of family do I want to support? What kind of business do I want to build? What kind of writing do I want to put out there? And is the work that I'm doing and the way that I'm structuring my day allowing me to be the very best version of that? And so when I talk about connection, I really talk about how do your daily actions, your daily tasks, your calendar, your inbox, your to-do list, how do those things interact with that calling that you've set out for yourself and that thing that you want to achieve? And so throughout the course, the exercises that are there are really helping people not just figure out how to say no, because you can find that anywhere on the internet, but like what to actually say yes to, how to be strategic in the way that you say yes to things right now.
Excellent points. And I mean, and even with us scheduling this, you said you had a work block, because I suggest, hey, let's do this time. And you said, well, I have a work block in there. And so we, of course, respected that. And I think that's great, because it's a lot of these folks talk about chunking your time. And when you talk about thinking about what's most important, how often should we reassess that, do you think? I mean, because it's so easy, again, from a musical analogy, you play a guitar and it gets out of tune regularly. And so you got to tune the strings, tighten them and whatnot. How often should we be tightening the strings in our lives, so to speak, to stay in tune?
Yeah, I mean, I would
Like
say that your mileage may vary, right? I think everybody's different. And I think that, so we have a piano in our home, and we're supposed to get it tuned every year.
Yeah.
Except it's right in front of, like, it's an upright piano, so it's right in front of this big storage closet that we have. It's sort of like hidden underneath the staircase. And what happens is that every time we move the piano to get into the storage closet, because I've decided there's something that I need to look at that's in there, I need to get something out of there, the piano gets out of tune. So like if your piano is just sitting against the wall, you can tune it every year and you're fine. But if you're futzing with it all the time and moving it around, then it gets out of tune more often. So I think for individuals, if you are in stasis right now, like maybe you've got young children and in 3 or 4 years they're both going to be in elementary school, and so the rhythm of your life changes. Or maybe you've got older children like me where in 3 or 4 years you're going to be an empty nester. Or maybe you're looking at yourself and you're like, I've got another year before I get out of graduate school and then I do something. So we have these moments that are natural on-ramps and off-ramps of our lives. And I think for any of those things, like if you're waiting to pay off some debt, or if you've got, sick parents, or whatever the case may be for you in your life, if you're like, I want to do that, but I'll be able to start making moves then, right? Whatever the then is. I think those are the moments where it's easier to make change because you have that natural on-ramp. So I think the doing it maybe the 6 months or the year before those times come, that's a great opportunity to say, when I have this massive external change to my life, is the internal thing that I'm doing going to stay the same, or will I be affected by it? I thought that my calling, my need for connection, the contribution control, I thought it was all going to be the same after I sold a business that I founded and ran for 15 years to the people who helped me build it. And then all of a sudden I had this crisis of identity. I had this like, oh my God, total like midlife crisis, because I didn't know who I was when I was no longer LGO CEO. And I hadn't had the forethought to think, oh, my piano is going to get really out of tune because I'm really rooting around in the storage closet. So I think, it would be easy for me to say, people should do this every 3 to 5 years. But the truth is, I think that there are some 3 to 5 years that look a lot like the 3 to 5 years before. And then there are some 3 to 5 years where every 6 months looks different. So I think everybody, as I said, your mileage may vary on this.
Yeah, that's a good point. It sounds like it's more a matter of principles that you fine tune within the scope of whatever your life is, but constantly striving, growing, and reassessing as needed, and finding, like you do with your kids, trying to find balance in that process too.
Absolutely. When I ran my recruiting firm, I used to ask questions in the very early parts of the interviews where I would ask people about a parent, a sibling, a mentor, a teacher, a person of the cloth. Maybe it was a diagnosis, maybe it was a world tragedy, maybe it was some kind of event. There was always something where the person figured out who they were, right? Like you were this person before, and then something happened and you were this person after. And just talking to people about who the people were in their lives who were meaningful, who helped them think through things, who maybe affected them, maybe they had characteristics that they wanted to emulate. Maybe there was a major moment where they were forced to change everything they were doing. But talking to them about the people and the moments in their lives where that they really felt shaped them would give me so much insight, and it would really open the door to having these incredibly rich conversations with these candidates that I would always start my conversations in that place. I mean, I went in deep and I went in deep fast. But those are the moments. So, for listeners that are like, well, I'm not sure when to do this. I'm growing, I'm evolving. It's constantly changing. I think it's exhausting to be constantly self-assessing and reevaluating and self-studying, but also we're stuck in here, right? Like we're in here all day, every day. And now we're stuck inside all day, every day. So this is a great moment, right? We've got time on our hands. And, those personal development books that you bought because you wanted to develop personally, what a great time to crack them open. Or if you decide you don't want to read them, like throw that struggling author a bone and buy the audiobook and listen to it while you finally clean out the fridge or whatever the things are that are on your like, look good goals, I want to get these done one day list.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think like anything, but especially a time like now, it's always valuable to I know it's a kind of an overused cliche to look at the bright side, but there's always a bright side. There's always a flip side to the coin. And if you're going through something, you talk about on-ramps and off-ramps, like every off-ramp by default is some form of on-ramp somewhere else. So you get off at Main Street and now you're on Main Street and you're not on the freeway or whatever, so to speak. And I always like analogies too like that, because what we're talking about with our lives is you're building something. I think about a house. We're both in houses at the moment. And there's a process there. You dig and lay a foundation, and then you start to build the framing, and then you throw down the electrical and the heating and cooling, and then the drywall. At least in America, this is how we do it. And so it's you got to get to know yourself. It sounds like you got to kind of get to know your process, what works for you, who you are, what you're about, and that's an ongoing process. We don't hold ourselves, maybe some of us hold ourselves to big high standards of perfectionism. Do you have any thoughts on perfectionism as we're getting close to wrap up here too? But I, for one, struggle with perfectionism. I don't know about you, but what do you think about that part of it? Because sometimes we hold ourselves too high of a standard, and then we beat ourselves up.
So I don't know that the problem is that we hold ourselves to too high of a standard. I think that the problem is that we hold ourselves to other people's standards. So again, I wrote a book called Limitless, How to Ignore Everybody, Carve Your Own Path and Live Your Best Life. So I'm all about the ignoring everybody part. And I think, we have these insatiable, unreachable, or insidious, unreachable goals that make us insatiable. We think that, I'll be happy when I get this. I'll be happy when I get that. It tells us we can't be happy now, or the life has to be perfectly work-life balanced, as if, God forbid, there's ever any connection between the two. We live in a social media world. There's always connection between the two. These annoying flower crowned girls that are staring out over Coachella and telling us to follow our passion. And so we have these ridiculous goals that we're supposed to be reaching that are set by someone else. And so I would ask people this question: what does perfection mean to you? Right? It doesn't have to be that every single thing, for example, I have this raging issue about green screens right now, right? So we're all working from home. We're all hot messes. I'm sitting here in my workout clothes with my bookshelf behind me, and I get on the call with somebody, and you can see my bookshelf, right? You can see I've got my books there. I've got my beautiful little box with my thank you notes. I think if somebody writes me a handwritten thank you note, I should honor that and keep it. I've got a little piece of art that my kids made me. I think if you look a little higher, you'll see, I've got some marathon medals and a thing from, running from racing in a rowing race. I have $1. That's the first dollar I made, with my old business. There's my baby shoes. I've got all sorts of stuff about me, and you're seeing and you're like, oh, I get to know Laura a little bit. I get to see her. I get to understand her. I know who she is. I trust her. And then we have people that are putting up these fake green screens that are behind them, and we don't learn a thing about them. And here's the thing, you have nothing that's behind you right now. It's a blank wall. That's fine. Yeah. But there are people who put fake things behind them, which is their way of saying to me, not only am I not letting you into my life, I'm intentionally keeping you out of my life. And I think so many of us right now are trying to figure out, how do we pivot, and how do we continue to sell, and how do we continue to communicate, and how do we continue to engage in this moment where we have to do everything online? The way to do that is not to sell. The way to do that is to build trust, right? You need to sell trust. At the end of the day, people will not buy what you were selling. They will buy who you are. And so if you want to look for perfection in anything, I would say be perfect in just being you. Show me who you are, because when you show me who you are, I love you and I know you and I believe you and I trust you. But when you don't, I'm actually left feeling lonelier and with more doubts than before we even started the conversation. So if you want to perfect something, just perfect being you. That's the only thing you need to perfect.
Yeah, I love all that. That's a great point. I don't know, me having my blank wall behind me, I don't know what metaphor that speaks to about me. I'm just saying. But yeah, when we in America, I think, invented the green screen and started out with use blue screens to do the weather and stuff, but then we use them for movies and all these other things. And I think there's some symbolism and metaphor and all that too. But it sounds like what you're saying when it comes to perfection is there's nothing wrong with having lofty goals. And people who've achieved amazing things, many of them say, make your goals huge. It's the old thing about, reach for the moon and maybe you'll land among the stars kind of thing, which ironically the stars are farther. But the striving for perfection, there's nothing wrong with that, but beating ourselves up in the process is where we then start to create an unhealthy relationship with ourselves. So it's kind of trying to find that balance, and we're all works in progress. So, I, for one, have gone to counseling and therapy, and you kind of work through your issues if you are beating yourself up and figure out, why am I doing that? Is there anything else you want to add? Because I know, I'd love to chat with you all day, but we all got other things we got to do too, and we can continue to talk over time. But as far as contribution, control, or any of the other things related to this virus that you'd like to touch on before we wrap up? Last kind of thoughts.
So here's what I would say. I would say that we are all worried about how do we get through this right now, and how do we put food on the table right now, and how do we sell right now, and how do we make lots of money right now. I don't know that there's a lot of current money to be had. And as an entrepreneur, you're an entrepreneur, I'm an entrepreneur, it's devastating, right? Like our businesses are both like gone. They're evaporated right now. They will come back. But I think how they come back will be in direct relation to how we act right now. So yeah, I'm working on this course. I'm putting it out there, hopefully in April. I'm hoping to put it out there for free in the beginning, just so I can, get it out and get it going and get people to test it. But then I also plan to charge a lot of money for it later, right? That's my goal. And my hope is that if I put it out to a lot of people now, and I posted on Facebook that I wanted to ask a few friends to test it, and 150 people responded within the first hour that they wanted to do it. So that was humbling and wonderful and great. But my thinking is this: future money is more than current money every day of the week. Future money is always worth more than current money. So if you cannot make any current money right now because everything is just sort of quiet and dead and everyone's waiting and seeing, what can you do right now to maximize what your future money is going to be? Who can you get out in front of? Who can you talk to? Where can you be of service? Where can you provide value? Are there people that you're like, I wish that person would just try me out, if only I could just get in front of them? Well, you can do it right now. Get in front of them. Get in front of them for free. Offer your services, offer something that you can do, because my guess is that if you do that and you show them you have true value, then they'll hire you later for future money, and that future money will be worth much more than current money.
Yeah. Great points. I've heard several things along those lines from people that when we come out of this, and again, hopefully sooner rather than later, we don't know for sure, we're in a place where we have an opportunity, and like we talked about the bright side of it and the development and spending time with family. A lot of people are speculating, is this going to bring more people are going to be having more babies or more divorces or whatever? But it sounds to me from what I'm hearing that overall, this is a good thing for families and couples. People are spending time together, and I'm sure there's some exceptions, but let's make the most of it, I guess, is how we maybe sum it up from what you're saying.
Yeah, look, we can only control what we can control, and we can't control the rest. And so, rather than getting stressed and anxious and worried about all the things we can't control, I'm just going to double down on what I can control. And what I can control is who is in my Facebook feed, who I follow on Twitter, where I'm getting my news. I can double down on my dedication to my work and being able to put out, good material, being of service to others. I can double down on my relationship with my husband and my kids. I can double down on reaching out to my family members and my friends. Other than that, I can't control much else. I can't control what the government's doing. I can't control what the virus is doing. I can't control what everybody else is doing, but I can control these things. And if I can control those things to the best of my ability, show up in the perfect version of me, right? The best version that I can be of myself in this time, so that in 6 months and 6 years and 60 years, when I tell my grandchildren about this crazy time, I can say I was really proud of the person I was then.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
That's it. That is the only standard that I'm holding myself up to right now.
And that's very freeing, it sounds like, because you're not putting everything on your shoulders, because that would be, first of all, incorrect, because the virus and other things are out of our control. So let's free ourselves and take control of the things that we can, and come out of this with some positive development and so on. Again, the book Limitless: How to Ignore Everybody, Carve Your Own Path and Live Your Best Life. And I love it. There it is right behind you. I love that. It's a great cover.
I think I lost you.
Uh-oh.
Lost you again. All right.
Well,
So that's me. I just want to tell your listeners they can find me on all the social media channels. As you mentioned, I'm LGO. So at Hey LGO is where they can find me everywhere. And I'd love to hear from people.
Cool. And the course is going to be called what now exactly? Is it also?
It'll be the Limitless course. So if you find me anywhere on social media at Hey LGO, or if you go to heylgo.com and sign up for my newsletter list, you will absolutely positively hear about the course. And we'll make sure that you have a link that you can send out for all of your people as well as soon as it launches.
Cool. And anyone looking, once this all clears, anyone looking for a great public speaker, here she is, Laura Gassner Otting. Thank you so much for everything. Let's stay in touch. And for our listeners, empower yourself, empower the world around you. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Empower Humans. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review this podcast. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit empowerhumans.com. We'll catch you next time.